read all over again. Fuck. When the White House went off, we were in the garden pulling weeds. I already recalled badly to it. It didn't matter if I was outside eating the mass hall or locked in my cabin. When it came, the shrieking tones blew up like pipe bombs between my ears. Only girls at the Thunderbird could pick themselves up after a few minutes, shaking off the nausea and distortion like the loose grass clinging to the camp uniforms. But me, hours would pass before I was able to piece myself back together. This time would have been no difficult, but it was. I didn't see what had happened. To provoke the punishment, we were working so close to the camp electricity fence that I could smell the singed air and feel the vultures and shouldn't vibrate in my teeth. Maybe somebody gone brave and decided to step out of the garden's bounds, or maybe dreaming big. Someone fulfilled our fantasies and threw a rock at the head of the nearest PSI. Special Forces soldier. That would have been worth it. The only thing I knew for certain that was the overhead speaker spun out two warnings blares. One short, long wrong. The skin on my neck crawled as if I would lean forward into the damp dirt, hands pressed tightly against my ears, surely tense to take hit. That sound that came over the speakers wasn't really white noise. It wasn't that weird buzz that air silence sometimes takes on when you're sitting alone in the silence, or faint hum of a computer monitor. To the United States government and its Department of PSI use, it was a love child of a car alarm and a dental drill turned up enough to make your ears bleed literally. The sound ripped out of the speakers and shredded every nerve in my body. It forced away. It was past my hands, roaring over the screens of 100 teenagers, freaks, instead at the center of my brain where I could reach in and rip it out. My eyes flooded with tears. I tried to ram my face into the ground. All I could taste was my mouth was blood and dirt. A girl fell over next to me, her mouth open in a cry. I couldn't hear everything else faded out of focus. My body shook with the burst of static, curling on and on myself like an old yelling piece of paper. Someone's hands were shaking my shoulders. I heard someone say my name, Ruby, but I was too gone far to respond. Gone. Shrieking until there was nothing, like the earth had swallowed me up in a single deep breath. The darkness and silence. Chapter 1. Grace Sunfield was the first to die. The first in my 4th grade. At least I'm sure that then thousands and maybe hundreds of thousands of kids had already got up and gone the same way she had. People were slow to piece it all together, or at least they had figured out the right way to keep us in the dark after a long kid scared to die. When the death finally came to light, my elementary school put a strict ban on teachers and staff talking about what was called Evans heart disease. After Michael Everhart's disease, the first kid know how died of soon. Someone decided to give it a proper name. Idiopathic obsolescent acute neuritis. IANN for short. And then it wasn't just Michael's disease, it was all ours. All the adults I knew buried the knowledge beneath lying smiles and hugs. I was stuck in my own world, sunshine ponies in my race car collection. Looking back, I couldn't believe how native I was. Just many clothes I missed. Even big things, like my dad, a cop starting working longer hours and could barely look at me when he finally did come home. My mom started to me on a strict victim region and refused to let me even alone for a few minutes. On the other hand, my parents were both only children. I didn't have my dead cousins send up red flags, and my mom's refused to let Dad install a soul-sucker vortex of trash and mindless entertainment. That thing commonly known as television meant that no scary news broadcast rocked my world. This combined with the CIA grade panic control set up on our internet. Internet says. Pretty much ensured I'd be far more concerned with how stuffed animals were arranged on my bed than the possibility of dying before my 10th birthday. I also completely unprepared for what to happen on the 15th of September. Had rained that night before, so my parents sent to school wearing red galoshes in class. We talked about dinosaurs and practiced curves before Miss Porter desisted for lunch with a usual look of relief. I remember everything detailed for lunch that day, clearly not because I was sitting across from Grace at the table, but she was the first because it wasn't supposed to happen. She wasn't old like Grandpa had been. She didn't have any cancer like Mom's friend Sarah. No allergies, no cough, no head injuries. Nothing when she died came completely out of the blue, and none of us understand what it meant until it was too late. Grace was locked in a deep debate about whether a fly which was trapped in her jelly-o cup. The red mass shivered as she waved it around, including out of the edge of the container when she squeezed too tight. Naturally, everyone wanted to give their own opinion on whether it was a fly or a piece of candy. Grace had pushed it in there, including me. Not a liar, Grace said. I just... She stopped. She stopped. The plastic cup slipped from her fingers, hitting the table. Her mouth was open, her eyes fixed to some just below my head. Grace was furrowed, almost as if she was listening to someone else. It was very difficult. Grace, I must say, are you okay? Her eyes rolled back, flashing white in a second, took her eyelids to droop back. Grace let a small sigh, not even strong enough to blow away the strange brown hair stuck in her lips. All of us sitting nearby frozen, though we must have the same exact thoughts. She fainted a week or two before. Just had passed out on the playground because Miss Port explained he didn't have enough sugar in the system. Something stupid like that. A noon aside rushed over the table. She was one of 4 old ladies with white visitor and whistles who rotated lunch in playgrounds. Duty during the week. I had no idea if she had medical certificates beyond a virgin knowledge of CPR, but she pulled Grace silently to the ground all the same. She had to rape adults as she passed her ear. Grace's hot pink t-shirt, listening up for a heartbeat that wasn't there. I don't know the old lady, though, but she started yelling and citing the white visitor, and curious faces encircled on us. It wasn't until Ben turned and nudged Grace's limbs with his sneaker, and then I realized she was dead. The other kids started screaming. One girl, Tess, was crying so hard she couldn't breathe. Small feet stumbled toward the cafeteria door. I just sat, surrounded by abandoned lunches, staring at the cup of jelly-o, letting terror crawl through me into arms and fingers let they would be frozen to the table. Before school security officer had come and carried me outside. I didn't know how long I would have stayed there. Grace is dead, I was thinking. Grace is dead? Grace is dead? And it got worse. A month later, after the first big wave of deaths, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention released a 5-step list of symptoms to help parents identify whether their kid was risk for IAAM. But then half my class was dead. My mom hit the list so well that I only found it by accident. When I climbed on top of the kitchen counter to took for the chocolate she kept hidden behind her baking supplies. How to identify your child as at risk, the flyer said. Recognize a flaming orange shaded piece of paper. They were sheet. Miss Point had sent it home with a few remaining students days before. She had phoned twice in fantasy with 3 staples to press out reading. 2 parents of Ruby only was written on the outside of the underline 3 times. 3 times was serious. My parents would have grounded me for opening it. Lucky for me, it was already open. Your child suddenly becomes suddenly withdrawn and elusive interest of inactivity the breast enjoyed. He or she, number 1, your child will suddenly become withdraw and or lose interest of inactivity to prevent enjoy. Number 2, he begins to have enormous difficulty in concentrating or suddenly becomes hyper-focused on tasks, resulting in he or she losing track of time or neglecting him or herself her to others. Number 3, he experienced hallucination, formerly chronic, migraines, memory loss, and or fainting spell. Number 4. She becomes prone to violent outbursts, usually reckless behavior or self-injury, burns, bruising, cuts, and cannot be explained. Number 5. He develops behavior behaviors that are inhabitable, dangerous, or cause to others physically harm. If your child demonstrates any of these above symptoms, register him or her at AAN.gov and wait to be contacted about the local hospital to which she should be taken. When I finished reading the flyer, I folded it back up neatly in exactly where I found it, and threw it up in the sink. Grams phoned later that week, and her usually to the point. Grams would explain everything to me. Kids were dying left and right, all about my age, but the doctors were working on it, and it wasn't to be afraid because I was her granddaughter. And I would be fine. I should be good to my parents if I felt anything weird. Understand? Things turned from bad to terrifying very fast. A week after three of the 4 kids in my neighborhood were burned, the president made a formal address to the nation. Mom and Dad watched the live stream on the computer, and I listened from the outside office door. My fellow American, President Gary began. Today we have faced devastating crisis. One threatens not only our children's lives, but the very future of a great nation. May it comfort you to know in time of our needs in Washington, the development programs both support families affected by this horrid affection, and the children blessed though to survive it. I wish I was seeing with his face as he spoke, because I could think he knew. He must. That his threat, the crime and our supposed glorious future had nothing to do with it. With the kids who had died, burned underground, or bruised into ashes, burned into ashes, they couldn't do anything but haunt the memories of the people who had loved them. They were gone forever. In that symptom list, the one that was sent home folded and stamped by teachers, which aired 100 times over of the news, as the faces of the dead scrolled along the bottom of the screen. The government was never scared of the kids who might die or the empty spaces they would leave behind. They were afraid of us, the ones who lived.